just I love that. So I just love people showing us what we're not going to expect. So that's very cool. So I don't know how many of you were on the Facebook group where I kind of did a little reminder of the show. And I kind of talked about how today um, was going to be not selling at all. It's just pure story time and me sharing about how I even got into jewelry in the first place. And then me also sharing and talking about some of the best kind of thrift store finds that I've found, some of which have sold. So it's a bit of a challenge to fully tell you because they're gone and I can't even pull them up on on eBay, because I think eBay only holds like pictures of your sales for like 2 years. So that poses a bit of a challenge. But I see lots of people out there, Kathy with insane bargains, and we see, you know, uh, Lulu Bell is in here, and Mel, and Aloha Girl, which I know is Irene, because I've got my list here to make sure that I don't mess it up. Obviously, Rachel's in the chat, and we've got JC with Jade Peacock, and uh, Teal Chickadee. I love her shows. She is, I don't know. I just love how she just shows stuff and then she just throws it all in a big pile and says, go. That's Marissa. Um, and yeah, so, and other people, let's see. I know Sandy's in here, Mountain Mama Sandy. And I know there's other people that if I didn't catch you, I just want to really thank you for coming. So I just today, I definitely have lots of jewelry to show you. It's all in here, as well as stuff on the sides here. I hate that our video for these lives have to be up and down because I can't actually show like everything going on here at the same time. But anyways, uh, so I just wanted to real quick kind of start about how I even got to jewelry in the first place. And I'm sure everybody sort of has their story. But, it's one thing to sort of kind of dabble in it. And it's another thing to be like, you know what, I am absolutely 100% hooked, you know? And unfortunately, it all started with a sad occasion, which is really when my mother died a few years ago. I grew up, I'm 54, so I was born in 1970, and I grew up, and when I was about 10 years old, my parents got divorced, and I actually grew up with my father. So whenever he moved, obviously I moved with him, and we would only visit my mother. And growing up, I wasn't like really super close to her. I just didn't, I don't know, I was a teenager, I was selfish, I was into my own thing, and I didn't really pay attention to all the details that as an adult you can appreciate. And so, she ended up getting sick and, was sick for a while, and she passed a couple years ago. And, when your parents die, my brother lives in Seattle, you have to go and, get everything together, sell the house, decide what of their belongings, and where they're going to go, meaning their stuff. She lived in Atlanta, Georgia, which is where I used to live, but I currently live in Pittsburgh. And my brother lives in Seattle. And it's not like we were necessarily looking to take all the furniture and every single ounce of thing in her house. We weren't. And thank goodness my mom was not a hoarder. She was very neat. She had already gotten rid of a lot of stuff, and her financial things were just completely in order. We showed up that weekend that we had found out, and within a day, she had. The way she had worked her finances, it automatically we didn't have to go through the court. Everything automatically went into our control. And so my point of all this is just to tell you it was easy. And I know all of us have gone through deaths and families, and it comes with a lot of emotion and confusion and, up and down sadness, and then fine and all that business. And, through the whole world of going through that with my brother and going through things, I started to learn, and this is where the guilt comes in for me. I started to learn things about my mother that I didn't know. Yes, I always knew that after she finished graduate school from Washington University as an adult, because she did it way later after she had children. I mean, I was literally a teenager when she went back to grad school. she worked with Indian tribes, and you know how when you're in a field like, you know, social work or nursing or as a doctor, you can go and you can do like loan forgiveness programs, and you can get placed in areas that are less desirable or more challenging. Well, my mom had gone and worked for an Indian tribe in the Spokane area. It was just, it might be called Kalipski. I may be saying it wrong. I don't know. But she became very kind of involved in that Indian community. And you know, always knew growing up, my mom loved to dress nice. She loved to go shopping. She loved to wear jewelry. And I would hear stories about my family. I'd hear stories about my grandmother. Now, let me note, my mother was the oldest Catholic family of 10 children. She was born in St. Louis, Missouri, and she was the firstborn, obviously. She was the first one to get pregnant, you know, heaven forbid, out of wedlock. Actually, she got pregnant out of wedlock, but then they quickly got married. You know, so that's the story of that. And my parents were married for about maybe 10 years. They were young. They were so young. I think my father was 19 when my mother got pregnant with my brother. And then 11 months later, I come along. So, you know, my mother was basically pregnant for like, you know, 2 years straight, you know, imagine. And then you're running around chasing two toddlers, you know. So, anyways, let me go back to when she died and going through all her stuff. So, as I'm going through all her stuff, I discover um, this huge tub, very organized, of a whole bunch of seed beads and jewelry making equipment and all this stuff. My mother has always loved jewelry. She's always had things hung up and displayed in her room. And she was also very artistic. So she was very skilled. She could draw, she could play instruments, she could do all these things. She also, in her years, was very involved in like square dancing. She was a square dance caller, and you know, she just did all these really unique, awesome things. And I just, as a teenager, I didn't appreciate all those neat things about my mother. And now that she's passed and I go through her stuff, which as a kid, you would never be nosy. You would never just go and dig through all her old, you know, journals and all her old, but when they die, that's what you do. You look for it because you want to make sure you're not going to throw anything away that's important. So within all of that, I ended up coming across this box that had all of this jewelry making equipment. And within that, I also knew that I had a whole bunch of jewelry that I'd already gone through a few things of hers before she passed that she wanted me to take and split some stuff up with my brother, which I did. And then, but I never made the connection of the craftiness ability of my mother. And that's what I'm going to talk about now. Um, I always knew she was crafty. I always knew that she was skilled that way. But you know, you never know when you look at jewelry and things if what you're looking at is something that was made by them, handmade, or you don't know if it was just bought at a store or, you know, made in bulk. But from my discoveries, which I'm going to show you tonight, I found out that a lot of her things she made from scratch. She drew out plans. She and you know, I have books and notes and pictures to show you that it was her because and I'll show you here in a second. But the first connection that I made, I always knew my mom made simple jewelry, you know, like you take, you know, the long metal you know, I'm not even gonna, I'm gonna butcher the names of all the jewelry pieces, but when you buy those rods with a little knob on the end and you put the beads on it to make a simple earring and then you put a fish hook on it, those are not massively challenging. So I knew she had done stuff like that, but I didn't ever know that she had in detail made all these beautiful uh, you know, seed bead, um, I would have to say Native American inspired jewelry. And this is where these two specific pieces to start with is where I knew that all of this stuff was made by her. So I'm going to bring forward a few things that I'm going to tell you right now. These were not store bought. These were made by my mother years and years ago that I came across. Now, obviously, you guys see seed bee things a lot. You probably see things that were probably made in bulk. But the fact that my mother made this, she'd already passed. totally moved me. I was just like, oh my gosh, the selfish me growing up that didn't even delve into the world of all the things that she loved. When I grew up with my father, so I wasn't there. So I shouldn't be too hard on myself. But, this is what we do to ourselves. We beat ourselves up and, make ourselves feel bad because, you should have done more. But anyways, this is how I know she made this. These are all made with seed beads. Obviously it's this lady who's dancing. Now, mind you, my mother was a big dancer, obviously, because she did square dance calling. She dabbled in other types of dancing, like clogging. She was like the president of the Spokane Folklore Society. She played the mandolin. She played the violin. She played all of these things. She was very creative. And let me also say my grandmother was also very into square dancing because I have pictures of her. Here actually is one of my grandmother's. This is so old, I can't even tell you. But my grandmother would wear, a button-up shirt, and she would match. She would coordinate with my grandfather, and they would go to these square dances, and they would, do their thing. I guess it was their day night. Mind you, they were Catholic parents with 10 children. So they're going out for the night to be on their own. But I want to show you back here, this is obviously bought. This is not handmade. But what that says back there is Royal Rust Resistant. Okay, great. You probably need rust resistant when you're square dancing and sweating and all that. But this would go up by my grandmother's collar. If she took a button-up shirt and buttoned it all the way up to the top, she would put it up there like it was a tie, like when men put a tie. I have pictures of my grandmother wearing this. And so it's really cool that I have it. It's so well made. And that's what I want to talk about is how things back then were just so well made with such quality. And I don't just mean jewelry, but furniture and homes and I don't know, just things were just well made. And they had less tools to make those things happen. And I know you can see in here, each of these kind of faux pearls are each prong set. Don't know if you can see that. We obviously have a lot of crystals and things like that. Now, this she didn't make, I believe. Obviously, she just bought this. But I was told by my mother that she learned all her jewelry making and her love for jewelry because of my grandmother. She told me that my grandmother used to make, rosaries. My grandmother and grandfather used to make rosaries for people in the Catholic Church, and they would request, "Hey, will you make one for me? Will you make one for me?" I'm going to show you one that's a kind of a family heirloom that was passed down to me. So let me show you real quick what I came across in the hunting through my mother's entire house, trying to decide what I throw away and what I keep and what I sell, what I pass on to my brother and his family. And then you're also emotional because your mother just died. But I'm flipping through. I found this huge tub of seed beads, jewelry making equipment, and I'm just very casually flipping through this book. It's old. It's yellowing, it's whatever, and I'm flipping, and I'm just taking a brief look at it to see what has come upon me. And I came across this that obviously was a hand-drawn picture that my mom was planning to design. And it was right next to this picture of something that was similar that she happened to see in the local newspaper. Now, I don't know if this local newspaper has a date on it, um, but it doesn't look like it does. Hold on, let me see if there's a date on here. My guess is it is probably early 70s. And then I don't have it now because I gave it to one of my nieces, but there was a necklace in her stuff that looked like this. And I thought, wow, my mother made this stuff. And it moved me, I mean, to tears. It was very emotional. And I was like, oh my gosh, I never knew that, she never pushed this stuff on me. She never said, hey, you're going to want these things, or hey, I want to tell. She never bragged. She never said, I did all these things. Look at me. I'm so amazing, blah, blah, blah. But as I'm also flipping through this book, I come across these two cutouts, obviously from a magazine. And this first cutout, that probably looks a little bit familiar to you. Now, obviously, this picture is someone making earrings, but does that look a little bit familiar to you? My mother obviously saw something and got inspired, and bam, Isn't that cool? And I looked at that and I thought, you know what? My mother made that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, she saw something. She's like, I'm going to create this. And, now obviously this is a catalog where you can go buy stuff. And I'm going to show you other things that I'm going to show you that I'm not going to show you, but I have a whole tub with all of her jewelry making equipment, with all of her extra beads that were in some of her jewelry that was made versus things that she never used, which proves to me also that they were made by her because we have all these extra pieces. So that was one thing that I came across, obviously just a necklace. And then another thing that I saw, again, she hadn't even gone. Maybe at this time she was involved in maybe she was at this time. This was later. This was probably, I think this picture was earlier here. But I think this was probably 10 years later. I think this is after she started to work for those tribes, those Indian tribes. And if you notice, those are a whole bunch of corn husks made with little teeny seed beads. And the edges of those little things are all leather, little leather things off like that. And so again, in my mother's stuff, I had come across this necklace. There's no brand. These exact twisty barrel clasps are in her jewelry making equipment that came to me. And I came across that again with little leather touches and, sort of resembling this thing that I saw in her pictures. And again, I was like, oh my gosh, and I feel bad going back and thinking, you know what? I didn't know. I didn't know my mother made all these things. I would have done these things with her while she was alive. Mind you, in her older years, she didn't do all this stuff. This is stuff when she was younger. And this particular catalog has a whole bunch of, instructions and things like that. But it definitely has pictures of earrings in which I'm going to just quickly show you a whole bunch of other things that I know that she made. Anyways, yay for all of those creative people who make their own things. I think it's so cool. So, yeah, so those are those two cool pieces. And let me show you some other things that, I gave about half of the things that she made to my brother. I have one brother, and when my mother died, I gave half of the stuff because he has two daughters and a son, and I wanted to make sure we're spreading all this out. This is a beautiful barrette. Those are all hand sewn, hand stitched seed beads. This is not massively produced. This was made by my mother. You see, it's got a backing of leather here. It's got a normal barrette, which we can all picture from our growing up days. I definitely wore these barrettes in our hair. And then, this is all done by her. And I just am like, oh my goodness, my heart is moved. We've got this beautiful one. And let me just bring this down. And I'm going to just very quickly pop up just a few. Now, mind you, half the things have gone to my brother, tons and tons of earrings. Where in those books that I showed you, there's all these designs for earrings. And you can see, like, look, this earring is very similar to this earring that she probably used a pattern that was similar, um, to come up with those things. All of these down at the bottom of this beautiful earring here, these are like, I think these are possibly bone down at the bottom. Again, my mother worked for an Indian tribe for years before she then moved on and did other social work stuff. So she was very influenced by Indian, the Calypsi, I'm going to say that wrong, tribe. And what I should do real quick is pull up a picture of my mother so you can put a connection with who she was. And I know you guys don't know really what I look like except for the pictures on the, little flyer to come and watch all these awesome, these are just some necklaces that she had made, other earrings and whatever. So I'm going to show you that. Just super briefly, I'm going to pull up, hold on one second, a picture of my mother, who, by the way, had two children, 13 months apart, got married when she was 20. She was the oldest of 10, left and didn't go to college when she first left home. She went off and went to California and then ended up meeting my father within 6 months of being there. So let me, of course, it's not going to pull up on there. Can I pull it up on this phone? Okay, hold on. Let me just look at it this way. Give me one second. I just have to pull it up. Hang with me. Don't leave me. Because it's a public account. Of course, I'm not going to find. Oh, here she is. Okay. So, this is my mother. I don't know if any of you know me, but she was a beautiful lady. That was her mother. I wrote in my little posting about tonight's show, with it being all about collections, and I talked about, if any of you saw it on Facebook, about how tonight I wasn't going to do any sales. I was just going to talk about jewelry and the history of how I came to it, to caring about it so much. I mean, I always loved jewelry, but wasn't invested in it. And, I could go on and on. Here's me and my mother growing up. Here she is. She's a square dance caller. And this is actually after she passed. This is us at her funeral when all the grandkids are singing songs for her, blah, blah, blah. Very creative family. I won't bore you with all that. But the point of what I want to say is that, you know, sometimes very sad occasions bring people together. And what I also want to say is I was so moved when I found all this stuff that I made different decisions myself. And I did some things that I was like, you know what? I'm going to do some things a little bit different. Here's another thing my mother made, by the way. This incredible wallet, all hand beaded there. We do. Yes, we look very much alike. Now, I know it was done by her because I think this inner green wallet she bought. You can see how it's all stitched. That was not made by her. I think she bought an inner green wallet, if you look really close, and then I believe she hand stitched it to this green outer part. You see all this hand stitching? This was all done by my mother. And then, here she has this little, clasp here that was all leather, and you can see it's hand stitched. It's all done by her. There's not one doubt in my mind. Um, so after I found all that stuff out about my mother and all these things that she had made, I came home. I brought some things with me home, and I downtown Pittsburgh, there's this great shop that is literally like a bead shop. It's for bead making of things, and there are some really talented people that do little classes there that you can like sign up for, and you can like do things. And after my mother had died, I went there and I thought, let me go check this stuff out. And I thought, you know what? Wouldn't it be neat if I could like make some stuff that kind of in memory of my mother, just kind of in representation of her. So I signed up for this class where in the class you were going to learn how to make Frida earrings. And I think Frida is like a Spanish, um, I don't know. I don't know the true history of her. I don't know if she was a singer or if she was an artist. I'm probably someone in the chat knows. But I took a class and I learned how to make these. It's the same kind of beading that my mother did. I did it because of that reason. And these were my first attempt at making jewelry at that level. I always made simpler jewelry, but not stuff like this. And so here I did. I made these cute little things. Whoever the Frida lady is, if you look it up online, she has like very dark, thick eyebrows, was always very colorful. So I made that. And then I signed up for another class where I went in and all of this was sewn in. I sewed all of this. Some of these cabochons were just plastic. They were glued down. But this whole ring was all done by me. So it was just a fun class to kind of do, um, you know, just to kind of learn and connect with her. It was my way of connecting with her after she was gone. I also found in her stuff, I told you she did all this Indian stuff. This was obviously an old feather that she had. I don't know where she picked it up, probably in her Indian working stuff, but she had made. Um, this beautiful decoration on this old feather that she had made. And a couple months ago, I was out thrifting, and this is now years later. And I've gotten to the antique world, which a lot of you know that I used to have an antique booth. I had two actually that I've recently shut down because I chose to spend more time on jewelry because I was just more into that. And I came across in a store, a thrift store, this beautiful seed bead angel with this beautiful skirt and wings, and you can see how beautiful it is. And of course, I had to buy it because the first thing I thought of was my mother up there in the sky and looking down and thinking, oh, she's loving doing all those things. And I don't know, it just was a neat find for me to find that. So, that being said, it kind of got me into loving jewelry. And when my mom passed, there was several jewelry pieces that came to me. So what I'm going to show you next is just a few things that, when my mother had passed, there were things that came to me that were either hers or her mother's, or they were even on my father's side of the family. There were things that got given to me by my grandmother on my dad's side. And then my dad was remarried like, 30 years ago to my stepmom, who I'm very close to, who's from Australia. And her mother just recently passed, and there was some jewelry she gave me as well. So I was just going to show you very briefly just a few things that came down the pipe that, it's one thing when you find these things out in the wild, as Rachel will say, when you're looking for stuff and you're like, oh, I'm going to go thrift, I'm going to go find some deals. But you know what? The things that we buy were someone's grandmothers, were someone's mothers. And so it gives me this feeling of wanting to treat all of these beautiful things with such respect, because there was a life that it lived before it came to us. And it's a story. And just as I said in my little Facebook post, if any of you saw it on our group, I said, listen, jewelry tells a story. When you look at jewelry that once belonged to somebody, it was on the wedding ring finger of a woman that raised 10 children in a Catholic family. And all the life that went through as she wore that ring, or as she wore that necklace, or as she had a husband that came back from the war. And I'm not saying this was war, but my grandfather was a veteran and went away to war, and I have pictures of all that. And but obviously these are some things very old that he had brought for her. I'm not saying it's incredibly valuable, but it's valuable to me just because it was my family's. And so for all of you that as you're out there and you're hunting and I'm not saying for you to hoard things. I'm not saying in your own household to never throw things away. But when there's something that you feel like your kids one day they're going to care about it, they just might care about it one day. So, put a little box in the corner, set a few things aside that, when you're trying to get rid of the bulk of most stuff you don't really need to keep, some things will matter. And even though I wasn't super close to my mother, which meant I wasn't super close to my mother's 10 siblings who all grew up in St. Louis, a lot of her things came to me. My grandmother's furniture came to me because my mother was first born, and when my mother died, they came to me. So that I have never seen any of these rhinestone kind of cup, I guess they're called cup link necklaces. I have never, but I've never seen one that's actually sterling. In this one, I don't know if we're going to be able to tell. This was my grandmother's, but back here, it actually does have a mark for sterling on there. It says sterling and whatever. You can't really read it. I can't get it any closer. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in on here. But this was my grandmother's. I thought, as I'm getting all this stuff, I'm like, I didn't know at the time what I had gotten, but now as I've gotten into jewelry, I'm like, oh my gosh, I so appreciate that. How often in our hunts of jewelry do we come across natural stones, agates, a lot of these, bead necklaces that were vintage and old and that someone made. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, because my mother told me about what her mother did, that this particular necklace and the other one I'm holding here that my mother held for so many years were necklaces that my grandmother made. And so they're not a lot different from a lot of the other, there you go. That's right. That's right. They're not a lot different from the other beads we come across. But for me personally, I will, although I have tons of beads that look like this, I will never sell these beads because these beads lived the life that followed my family. So that was cool. I wanted to show you that. Here's a much more simpler one. We've definitely come across ones like this, but also made by my grandmother. Um, a lot of some of the jewelry making things that my mother had in this big tub that I found after she passed were things that were her mother's that she then had in this tub. It was unbelievable. Like, and me trying to go hunt out and figure out what things are. Now, these bottom things I'm about to show you in this little baggie are not highly valuable. I'm going to tell you now. And I'm going to tell you also that I came across, this is the first time I ever came across the Monet faux pearl beads that we've all seen in all of our thrifting and all of our selling with the hand knotted, well made, lovely, marked on the back Monet beads. I've seen them a ton of times in my selling and thrifting. But you know what? These were my grandmother's. You know what? I have a picture of my grandmother wearing these. And so for me, these will never go anywhere. These will always, it's like that whole story. There was another set. I guess that was a more cream colored set. She, I guess, had another set. You can see there's some filigree that was built up in here. And I found all of these in my grandmother's very vintage. I may bring it out in another video. She had, the typical vintage, jewelry boxes that we all find that you open up and then it opens up and it's huge and has drawers and all that. But here's another set of glass pearls that she had. I don't believe these were not gold. These were just a costume jewelry piece, but it was in our family. These my mother actually gave me. These are actual pearls, more modern for sure, but something that my mother gave me. So there's that. Let me just move all this stuff aside. And then just also in going through all my mother's stuff, I came across this really, really old, I guess it's a cigarette thing, I guess. It's super old. And the whole time I haven't really known if it was sterling silver or not. I have a magnet that I'm wearing. Let me see. It's not magnetic. And literally up to today, I never knew if it was sterling silver. I probably had put this away. This was when my mother passed, is when I found this, and never actually, did an acid test on it. But I don't think I need to. I think this was maybe my grandfather's. But if you look really closely in the back right here, it says sterling and 14 karat, which is unbelievable. It doesn't say 14 karat gold filled. It says sterling and 14 karat. There's the 14 karat there. And these are numbers. Okay. So the 14 karat, I'm sure, is referring to just these lines that are kind of in there. And I think it goes this way because this is a monogram right here. So I wanted to show you that. I'm getting through it. I'm getting through it. I promise. All right, I wanted to show you a few things. I hope I'm not boring you guys. I hope this is interesting to you. It is interesting to me. And I feel like it's neat to be able to tell you about why I got into jewelry. And this is why. This is the story. This is my story. So, anyways, I told you that my grandfather and my grandmother, but my mom more specifically talked to my grandfather who made all these rosaries for people in their church. I found two of these when my mom died. One of them I gave to my brother. And I kept the other one. And I actually saw these before my mom died because when I was going through her stuff, when she was still alive and I was trying to split up jewelry and send it to my brother, she had told me about this. And she had said, yes, that is a rosary that your grandfather made. And he would buy all the components and he would make these, obviously he didn't make this cross, but they bought the components in order to make all these, rosaries for, them. And you can just picture them every Sunday or whenever, or Wednesday, whenever they go to church, their rosaries are in their cute little things. The other one that my brother has was a little zippy thing that looked exactly the same. And that's, they went off to church and they had their rosaries and they just lived their lives. And so I just think that's super cool. Okay, let me show you a few jewelry pieces that came from my mother's side, and then I'm going to show you a few jewelry pieces that came from my father's side when they passed, as well as uh, my stepmom's side, which side, I have a dad who's remarried. So when my before my mother died, she had given me this ring that is so beautiful. It's, it, and when my mom told me the story about this ring, she said it was my grandmother's, which it was. It came in this really, really, really old box. And, my mom was trying to look for, the paperwork on this because she said it existed somewhere. And, way back then, uh, you know, um, I don't know. I don't know what the paperwork looked like way back then, but and what my mom had said is, yeah, it's real. And I looked at her, and I was not a jewelry expert at the time, and I said, Mom, there is no way that this emerald looking ring is real. First of all, it looks too perfect because emeralds, obviously when they're real, you're going to see imperfections in them. And if it was real, I would be a millionaire. Ha ha, I'm just kidding, but it does say 10 carat on the inside, and it does also have a maker's mark of some brand, which I had looked up the jewelry brand before. Um, and I do have a gem tester here. When I came back with uh, this jewelry, my mom was still alive when she gave me this. Um, I had gone to my local jeweler, and she and I went and wanted to confirm what I knew, that this wasn't real. I think what my mother meant by this was real is that it was a gift that my grandfather had given my grandmother, that was real gold. These side stones are not chips of glass, they're real. They are, I think they come up to, I don't know, maybe a lower level white stone, maybe topaz or near pear topaz, I don't know, but they're not glass. But when I took this to the jeweler, he had said, listen, this center stone is glass, but I'm going to tell you right now, it wasn't uncommon way back then when she was given this ring, which would have been, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many years ago, that people, this is the jeweler talking to me, actually put glass into real jewelry, real gold, real settings, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, well, that seems nuts. Why would they do that? But yes, this is what I learned. And I was like, okay, well, cool. And I considered possibly dabbling in the idea of, um, no, I don't want to sell her stuff. I'll never do that. I agree with you. It matters a lot to me. I dabbled with the idea of maybe at some point, replacing it with maybe a lab created emerald or things like that. And then I thought, you know what? I'm not going to change it. This is what my grandmother wore again all these years. So I'm going to wear it. I want to wear it just like she wore it. Um, and the jeweler also said, you shouldn't do anything, but I'm going to tell you. And he said that this ring was probably worth about $1,200 or $1,300, not because of the stones, but because of the setting that it was made in 10 karat gold, that was made to have such a huge stone in it. And he said the setting is worth more than any of it. Over $1,000 is what he said. I'm not going to do anything to it, but this is my fun ring that was my grandmother's, and that she probably went out on her date nights and thought, "Oh my goodness, what is?" Yeah, isn't that super cool, Rachel? I agree. So that came from my grandmother when she passed. Um, my grandmother raised 10 children, Catholic family. At some point when my grandmother died, her wedding ring was handed down to my mother. And then my mother wore it for years. She wore it so much that any sort of engraving that was in here. Yes, I saw that. Isn't that so cool? I appreciate all these people that are listening to my storytelling. I love that. I so appreciate you being here. And if any of you want to come in and participate in the chat or any of the things that we're doing, you want to come over to www.lilyworksjewels.com, and then that's part of the district community. You'll have an opportunity to you can join that community, and if you just follow that marketplace, then you'll be able to come in and participate in the district chat. You're able to chat from YouTube, but you can't see our chat. And I'm not doing any live sales tonight, but you would be able to bid as well, just so you know. So this ring, when my mother died, came to me. Now, it is so old. There actually are microscopic diamonds in there, believe it or not, that are about the size of a piece of sand. Ha ha. But there are diamonds in there. It's gold and silver. This is not silver. I'm sorry. This is white gold up here that at one point had a lot of like twisty decorations in there, but it's been rubbed off by a mother who raised 10 children. And then when I brought it home, I got it resized because it was a little bit too small for me. I'm not going to push it on because I have my other ring on there. But yeah, so that was my grandmother's ring that ended up coming to me because my mother was the firstborn in a family of 10. So some other rings that came to me, or another ring, individual ring that came to me when my mother, before my mother died, was this beautiful ring that's just so lovely. My mother was born in February. So for a lot of years, I thought that this ring was an amethyst because why wouldn't it be? She's a February birthday, and I know February is amethyst, or at least I believe it is. You guys can confirm that in the chat. But the story that my mother told me was that this beautiful little ring, my mother had gotten my mother had gotten a job, after school job. She was a teenager, in high school. And her first paycheck after starting this job, she used to buy herself her very first piece of jewelry. Now, obviously, maybe she had saved up a few paychecks, but ultimately she saved some money and went and got a real piece of jewelry. This is, in fact, gold. There are marks on the inside, all of that. But I didn't get a gem tester in my jewelry world until, probably a year or even longer after my mom had passed, and so I never had the opportunity to check whether or not this was an actual amethyst, assuming that it was. It is in gold and whatever, all that. But what I discovered in my findings was that this was actually it was a purple sapphire. And let me turn this upright so it can go in there right. Or let me go up here. It definitely is not an amethyst, but you can see it goes up there into the sapphire range. And then I took it to my jeweler and I confirmed this. I don't know how highly valuable purple sapphires are, but they exist. And so that was another very cool ring that came from my mother that I will love and cherish forever, and blah, blah, blah. And again, I got this sized so that it would fit my finger. I'm not going to push it on because I have other things going on. So there's that. What I also found that came to me in my grandmother's things, I have these awesome, really great bags that I keep a lot of my jewelry in. They've got these little charcoal pieces in it because it helps keep them from tarnishing. So that's how I store a lot of my jewelry, just to make sure that, I'm just taking care of it and that sort of thing. And I know you guys wouldn't normally know all this about me. I'm getting highly personal, and I'm sorry if I'm boring any of you, but this is my story. So I'm just telling you my story. This also came to me that I found in my mother's things. She had never talked to me about this little thing until ever. But when she died, this came to me. And I know that it was my grandmother's. At the time when I first found it, I didn't know anything about jewelry. I was just starting to explore about it. But it's just this beautiful chain with this elegant a pendant on it. This teeny little microscopic thing in here is actually a diamond. And the way that this is made, you can see that the diamond, when they made this little pendant, there's a little teeny hole there so that light can get in there for the little microscopic diamond. But isn't that fabulous? At the time when I got this, I didn't know how to look for jewelry marks. I hadn't gotten into this yet. I had just started dabbling in it, and I was like, oh, and I took it to my jeweler along with some other things, and I was like, can you tell me about this piece, blah blah blah. And I don't know if you can see this, but on here there was marks in here that say, 1/20th 12 karat gold filled. So this was a gold filled piece, but it actually had a little diamond in it. But it was my grandmother's, and I think that's super cool. So there's that. Okay. I'm trying to move as fast as I can. I think I also mentioned to you that my um, you know, I hope you're enjoying story time. I'm just going on and on here. This is another bracelet that was in my grandmother's stuff that came to me. It's super Art Deco-ish. I don't know how, I don't know exactly I don't know the details, but I know it wasn't my mother's. I know it came from my grandmother. But if I look at the marks inside of here, which I'm not going to sit here and delve in there, it also says that it's gold filled. So that's a pretty cool bracelet. Sometimes you might see me wear that in some of my sales or video. I think I also mentioned to you my mother's love for music, my mother's love for folk music. Specifically, like I said, she was a member of the Spokane Folklore Society. No, I'm sorry, she was the president of the Spokane Folklore Society. She played the banjo, she played the mandolin, and she played the violin. So this is something that was in my mother's collection. Absolutely, 100%. And you know what? This is why I do jewelry. I have my own things that I love, but it's neat to find jewelry pieces for other people. I can't tell you how many times I've sold things on eBay and someone sends me a message that says, you know what? I really love this piece. I got, these earrings from my mother when she died, and this pendant looked so similar to it. I got it, and they tweaked it or made it work, and they like made a set of it, and they tell me these stories about these family things, and it moves me. I don't know, I just love it. And all these things tell a story. Jewelry tells a story. So this is an old violin pin that is in fact sterling silver. Look at the details on that I found in my mother's things after she passed. I didn't take this before she left, but again, right here, you can see a mark that says sterling. I didn't clean it up or anything, but that's a beautiful brooch that was my mother's. And then I'm not going to get the light out right now because it's going to take up my time. This is, in fact, an amber. Also, another, uh, uh, this is another like violin with, you can see it's got the little twisty things, which is like a violin wood. And of course, the strings here are not bending the way I want them to, so I'm straightening them so that they can look pretty for you. Hold on 1 second. There we go. And so, yeah, so this was another piece that I found in her things. And that is, in fact, amber and sterling silver. I don't know if those marks are on the back. Let me see. Yes, in fact, right in the center, right here where this little mark is here says 925. So that was another thing that came from my mother. I'm going as quickly as I can. I set aside all these other things to show you my thrift finds, but I honestly don't even think I'm going to get to it. I think it's all going to be me just telling you the story and going through all this old stuff that came to me. All this might have to be another video, but of course, I since have found lots of things in my own hunting, many, many diamond pendant necklaces that I kept for myself. Of course, I'm not an idiot, that I enjoy wearing. And if you see me, you don't always see me on camera, but let me just make it personal. Let me flip this around. Here I am. Hi. Here I am telling you the story. Um, uh, a lot of these things that I found in my thrifting and in my huge 20-pound jewelry boxes at the bottom, wrapped around and tangled within things. I found lots of diamonds as well as lots of other precious metal and things like that. But I don't think I'm going to be able to get to those tonight. Let me continue with the few things that came from my grandmother. So when my mother passed, this was also in her stuff. But a lot of times when you come across these bangles, they're often just, just regular metal. Usually they're not magnetic. But these are, in fact, every single one of them are sterling. and I've tested them. I can't, of course, get this to focus, but I'm not sure if they're actually marked, but they are actual sterling. And everyone knows the sound that sterling makes. But these came from my mother. I don't know if they were her mother's, but there's another thing to share with you. And, like I said, a lot of the things that I have gotten from my mother over the years, there were a lot of I'm sorry, Native American things connected to the fact that she worked with them. So I have a lot of things from my mother that were turquoise. There's a little brooch that was hers. Um, I found this. I shouldn't say I found it because for years it was actually in her house. But this was a Native American doll that I believe my mother made. She was very artistic. The reason I know she made it is because this material she also sewed, which I also sew, was in her whole tub of all her extra material. So this dress I know she made. I also know that these beautiful leather moccasins, which she had a book on, were all hand stitched. They're not the same. They're not uh, symmetrical, but they were made. And so you just see my mother making this beautiful little necklace for this cute little Indian lady. Again, so inspired by that Native American world. Okay, so on the other side of my family, when my grandmother died on my father's side, a few things that came to me that were my grandmother's was this beautiful. Um, this is a just like a wishbone brooch. This is real pearl, and from my recollection, let me look on here real quick. It says Danecraft, 1/20th, 12 karat gold filled. Let me look. And so, yes. And how many times have we come across Danecraft or whatever brands, just like I showed you the Monet pearls earlier, and you're like, oh, Monet pearls, curl, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But when it came from your family, and your grandmother passed it down to your father, who passed it down to you, me, it has meaning. And so the fact that my grandmother loved and wore that, and I can imagine it's something that my grandfather gave her. I don't know why this popped off its little uh, chain. This is also gold filled, but this was something that was my grandmother's on my father's side. I believe this is also all gold filled. It had this really unique clasp on it. Here, um, let's see. I don't know why or how that necklace popped off of there. But the way that clasp works, it's sort of lariat, sort of, is this ball goes in and then it hooks back like that and sort of goes in the skinnier part like that. And that's how it was worn. That's a much vintage e-clasp that was my grandmother's on my father's side. I'm moving as quickly as I can. Another thing that came from my grandmother. These are real pearls. But if I look really closely, there are marks here. All of these jewelry brands that we are looking for, people in your families bought them. These actually say cremants on them. They are real pearl. But yeah, so those were my grandmother's. I'll never get rid of them. I don't often wear twist back, screw back earrings, but if I had an occasion, I'd wear those. On my mother's side, my dad was remarried to my stepmom, who is Australian, and I've gotten a couple jewelry pieces over the years. But one of the things that I just recently got, her mother passed. My stepmother's mother just recently passed. Her name was Paula. They lived in Australia. My grandmother grew up there all these years. This is her name, Miss Paul P. Walker. But my mother, my stepmom, gave me this ring. In Australia, a lot of the jewelry they make is rose gold. It's not uncommon for their things to be made with rose gold. So if I look in here, what the thing says on it is it says 625, which stands for a type of gold. I mean, I don't know if it's like what percentage gold. I'll have to look it up. Someone look it up quick in the chat. You can tell me. This particular ring doesn't have it, but a lot of the rose gold items that I have might also, next to the 14 karat, have a letter P, which stands for plum, which I think is very similar to rose gold. Why can't I? bring that closer and let you see it. There we go. So yeah, those are amethyst, and those are pearls. And this was a thing that was way back done for my mother's my stepmom's mother. This was just their certificate of valuation, and here's that ring. Not that I'm trying to show you the value. It wasn't a massive value, but this is the story that it had. And then these beautiful little, of course, coming from Australia, it's not uncommon. There's a lot of pearls that come from Australia, very valuable pearls, Akoya pearls, I believe. But also we know that a lot of opals come from Australia. So these were earrings that are also gold. They're plum gold. I'm sure if I were to look at the backs on this, that my stepmother, I think they were given to her. I don't know the full story, if that came from her mother or maybe they were given from her mother, but she gave them to me. So those are some family things. So yeah. So ever since my mother had passed, I had started to go into the antique world of interest. And you can see some other items that are here on my tray. There's a little old vintage tray here. I've got some old, these are old, these came from Australia actually. I don't know if they're lead crystal or not, but they are obviously for perfume. There's another perfume bottle here. This doesn't have stuff in it. It's just the color of that crystal has that color. Oh, and it's singing. This is a beautiful music box. I didn't mean to make it sing. I love birds, so I had bought that. Okay, it's just singing for us. Okay. And of course, I had to pull in the little koala twist because of that history there. So I didn't actually get to my finds from thrift stores. So I apologize that my story time tonight involved not getting to the actual thing that I put what was on my thing. But you know what? It gives us an occasion for another, another one of my, lives, or if we have another train, I can delve into that. Because I definitely, as many of you who are sellers at that out there and have, we're like pirates. It's all about the hunt, all about trying to find, the diamond in the rough, literally, because I have found so many diamonds. I do want to say that I am part of the train that's going on tomorrow, also with Lilyworks and the Lilyworks community. I know many of you know, but some of you may not, that if you follow, if you're coming to us from YouTube or you're not fully aware and you're actually in district, you may not know that if you go to Lilyworks Jewels, that's sort of the bigger portion of that marketplace. But she has two other stores that is Lilyworks Antiques. Correct me, Rachel, if I'm wrong. Or, oh, you're welcome. Thanks for listening. I know I went on, but I'm sure we all can connect to the things that I was saying. And she also has another marketplace called Lilyworks Makers. So if you're on here from district and you're not necessarily following any of those, Lilyworks Jewels, Lilyworks Antiques, or Lilyworks Makers, definitely go check them out and consider following those pages. Or you can follow me. I always forget to tell people to follow me. I forget it every time because I just start talking. But if you want to go to Cherish Relics Boutique, that's the thing you're in right now. I would love it. If you reach out to me to follow me, I will definitely reach back to follow you. I also have a YouTube channel that I also forget to talk about all the time because I get so into the jewelry that is all jewelry unboxings, unbaggings, shares, hauls from antique stores, and the like. And as I was mentioning, tomorrow we have a continuation of this share your collection raid train that I, for the first time, am actually doing the antiques and collectibles side of it because I did. There you go. Rachel put it in the chat. lilyworksantiques.com. So for the first time, a lot of you have seen a lot of my littles and things in a lot of my shows for jewelry, but in a lot of these littles I'm not selling. Some of them are mine. But I have a ton of littles that came from my antique stores when I closed them that I'm going to be bringing tomorrow. That's what my collection is my antique store littles. And tomorrow I will actually be doing sales and some auctions. And I have a lot of really beautiful things that I'm not looking to need to get a killing on. I don't need to make a massive amount of money. I'm now focusing just on jewelry, so I'm okay to let a lot of those antiques go to just cover the costs of which for them. So you're going to find some incredible bargains into my show tomorrow as part of the raid. So I hope you come and watch the rest of the great people that are on tonight's shows. I think there's two more, and we're about to raid into. Let me pull up my picture here. Um, we're about to raid into Violet with Hints of Violet, and then following her will be Sharon, Kirk's Jewel Cove. And then also tomorrow we have the raid train, like I said, on the antiques and collectibles side. So thank you for all of you guys out there that decided to come. And again, we didn't even get to play Family Feud, but we will play it next time. Hey, thanks everyone for coming, and you have a great night. Thanks for being part of this amazing jewelry community with Rachel with Lilyworks, kind of the whole Lilyworks umbrella. And now we're going to raid into Hints of Violet. Thanks again. Goodbye. Oh, I'm Curry, by the way. Goodbye. And here we go.